Hello! Today we're going to talk about comparability and uncertainty topics related to environmental product declarations, or EPDs, and the Embodied Carbon and Construction Calculator, or EC3 tool. As a reminder, if you're looking for other topics, you can go to the Resources tab on buildingtransparency.org and click Videos, where you can see all our tutorial videos for a wide range of topics. You can also go to the EC3 tab and click EC3 User Guide to answer any other questions you might have. The current landscape of environmental impact reporting using EPDs is complex, so direct comparison of environmental impacts from EPDs should be done carefully. Essentially, there are several LCA criteria which should be aligned in order for direct comparison of EPDs to be useful. So let's get into these criteria. In terms of LCA scope criteria, we need to compare products that do the same thing. To do this, the declared units from two EPDs should be the same, and the performance of both products should be appropriate for whatever function is required. In other words, we need to be comparing products within the same material product category, and they need to have the same performance characteristics. EC3 facilitates this criteria, and then you're encouraged to be as specific as possible in terms of the product category, and you're also encouraged to use performance filters to get the specific functionality that you need. For comparability of EPDs, it's also important that methodological assumptions are in alignment, including the system boundary, the treatment and assumptions made about the use phase and end of life, the allocation method, and the cutoff rules. These items are commonly defined in the PCR, so if two EPDs have the same PCR, they should be comparable regarding these assumptions, although it should be noted that EPDs with two different PCRs does not necessarily mean they're not comparable. If you'd like, during your search you can specify that you only want to see EPDs associated with a certain PCR. You can do this by going to the More dropdown and then selecting the PCR that you want. So for the EPDs, for this search, you'd know that they are in alignment in terms of methodological assumptions. Lastly, there's the issue of underlying LCI data quality used to generate EPD results. Before comparing two EPDs, we'd want to know things like, were the results generated using the same background lifecycle inventory data and software? Do they have equivalent data quality in terms of their temporal, geographical, and technological applicability? And are they the same type of EPD? For instance, we wouldn't want to compare values from an industry EPD to a product EPD. Underlying data quality is one of the harder comparability criteria to address because it's not often obvious or clear from an EPD which background data sources have been used or quality of the LCI data in general. One way that Building Transparency Sea Change Labs are addressing EPD data quality is by addressing EPD uncertainty. Consider the two hypothetical EPDs shown here. Both are for 4,000 psi concrete. EPD number 1 reports a GWP of 250 kilograms of carbon dioxide equivalent per meter cubed, while EPD number 2 reports a GWP value of 248 kilograms of carbon dioxide equivalent. Thus, upon first glance, it might appear that EPD number 2 is the lowest carbon option. However, if we look further into the EPD data quality, we can see that EPD number 1 is plant-specific, supply chain-specific, and the background data is geographically and temporally representative of the processes. On the other hand, EPD number 2 has the opposite characteristics. It is not plant-specific. In fact, it's an industry-wide average EPD, and the background data is not geographically or temporally relevant. Thus, although EPD number 2 technically has a lower reported GWP, the results from the EPD are clearly of much lower confidence than EPD number 1. To make this a bit clearer, let's take a look at an example. Here I've selected a 4,000 psi concrete EPD. We can see how the EPD compares to other 4,000 psi concretes in the database by looking at the comparison box plot. We can also see that this particular EPD uses data that is manufacturer-specific, from a specific plant, and also a specific mix. However, it's not batch-specific, and it uses no supply chain-specific LCI data. In other words, it's using generic or average LCI data for its upstream raw materials, like cement and aggregate. Thus, the GWP impact is associated with some uncertainty, as you can see reflected in the box plot. If, however, the EPD was not plant-specific or manufacturer-specific, you can see how the EPD would be associated with higher uncertainty when comparing to other EPDs from the search because the blue range increases.
In order to incentivize data transparency, EC3 encourages comparison on the 80th percentile or conservative value for an EPD rather than the reported average, which is the dotted line you see here. In summary, by comparing the 80th percentile value for an EPD, EC3 is using the burden of the doubt methodology. In other words, if the data quality of the EPD is not disclosed or is generic data, then the uncertainty in the EPD is assumed to be high. Thanks for watching this discussion of EPD comparability and uncertainty and how it's treated in the EC3 tool.